The Tresei were a race that had once been proud and mighty. Their civilization spread across the stars. They were known for their wisdom, their advanced technology, and their peaceful nature. But that was many years ago. Now, they were a forgotten people, living in the shadows of their once glorious world. Their planet had been destroyed in a great disaster, one that no one had expected. The cause of the disaster was a mystery, but it had left the Tresei's home in ruins. Their cities, once filled with the hum of life, were now silent. The great temples that had stood for centuries were reduced to piles of broken stone. The survivors lived in the remains of their ancient world, struggling to survive in a place that had once been the heart of their civilization. The Tresei were not a warlike people. They had always believed in peace and understanding, preferring to avoid conflict whenever possible. But that had made them vulnerable. When the disaster struck, no one came to help them. The other galactic civilizations, who had once been their allies and friends, turned their backs on them. The Tresei were left alone, abandoned by those they had once trusted. Now, the Tresei lived in fear. Hostile forces from across the galaxy came and went, taking what they wanted from the ruins of their world. Resources were scarce, and the Tresei struggled to rebuild. But no matter how hard they tried, they could never restore what had been lost. The memory of their great past haunted them every day. Among the survivors, there was one who refused to give up. Her name was Nera, an elder of the Tresei people. She had seen the rise and fall of their civilization, and she knew that the Tresei could not survive alone. Despite the harsh reality of their situation, Nera believed that there was still hope. She had heard stories of a race of humans from Earth, a species known for their bravery and determination. Perhaps they could help. Nera sat in the quiet of her chamber, her eyes focused on the glowing device in front of her. It was an ancient communication device, one of the few pieces of technology that had survived the disaster. She had learned to use it after years of practice, and now it was her only hope. With trembling hands, she activated the device and began to send a message. The message was simple. We are the Tresei. We are in need of help. Our world is dying, and we cannot survive alone. Please, hear our plea. As she sent the message into the stars, Nera's heart sank. She knew that the chances of anyone receiving it were slim. The galaxy had moved on, and the Tresei were nothing more than a footnote in the history of the universe. But she had to try. If there was even a small chance that someone would hear their call, she had to take it. Nera leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She thought of her people, the children who had never known the greatness of their ancestors, the young adults who had been born into a broken world, and the elders who had lived through the fall of their civilization. Would they all perish in the ruins of their home, forgotten by the galaxy? As the hours passed, Nera could not shake the feeling that time was running out. The Tresei had always been a peaceful people, but they were not fools. They knew that their world would soon be claimed by forces more powerful than they could imagine. If they did not find help soon, they would be wiped from the galaxy completely. But then, just as Nera was beginning to lose hope, something happened. A signal flashed across the communication device. At first, Nera thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. But as she studied the message, her heart skipped a beat. The message was from Earth. Message received. We are coming. Nera could hardly believe it. After all these years of silence, someone had finally heard their plea. The humans were coming. For the first time in a long while, a spark of hope flickered in Nera's chest. She quickly gathered her people, sharing the good news with them. The Tresei were still hesitant, unsure of what to expect from these mysterious humans. But there was a feeling in the air, a feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, the Tresei's long-forgotten world would soon be saved. And as the sun set over the ruined landscape of the Tresei homeworld, Nera allowed herself to believe in a future where her people would no longer be abandoned. Commander Eli Stroud stood in front of the massive window of his ship, looking out at the stars. His mission was clear: to explore the outer reaches of the galaxy and make contact with any alien civilizations that might need help. Humanity had become strong in recent years. their technology advancing at a rapid pace. The galaxy was vast, and there were countless worlds that had never known peace. It was Earth's job to bring that peace to them, no matter the cost. As the commander of the human diplomatic team, Eli had dealt with many situations before, but nothing like this. The message they had intercepted was unusual. At first, the signal had appeared to be just another distress call, one of many that went unnoticed in the crowded vastness of space. But then something caught Eli's attention. The message had a sense of urgency, a rawness that made it different from the usual automated distress signals. It was the Tresse's message, the message from a race long thought to be lost. We are the Tresse. We are in need of help. Our world is dying, and we cannot survive alone. Please, hear our plea. Eli's fingers hovered over the controls as he read the message again. He had heard stories of the Tresse, but they were old, nearly forgotten. No one in the galaxy had heard from them in centuries. According to the old records, the Tresse had been a peaceful people, a race that had never been known for warfare. They were advanced in technology, but their world was isolated, far from the center of galactic power. When their planet had been destroyed, no one came to their aid. Eli knew this could be the opportunity to make a difference. The Tresse could still be out there, hiding, struggling to survive. But the question was, should they help? His crew had been divided on the issue. Some believed it was too dangerous. The Tresse had been forgotten for a reason. Perhaps they were a lost cause. Others argued that humanity couldn't ignore a plea for help, especially one as desperate as this. The Tresse might be the key to new alliances, new knowledge, and a chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. We need to help them, Eli said, his voice steady and resolute. Prepare the ship. We're going to the Tresse homeworld. The decision was made. The humans would answer the call. As the human ship sped through space toward the Tresse planet, Eli reflected on the consequences of their choice. His team had been trained for diplomacy, not combat. They were not warriors, and the Tresse weren't asking for war. They were asking for help. But would other galactic powers feel the same way? Would they see the Tresse as weak and try to take advantage of them? The galaxy was full of dangerous factions, and the Tresse might be caught in the middle of a struggle they didn't even understand. Meanwhile, back on the Tresse homeworld, Nera paced anxiously. She had sent the message, but would anyone respond? The moment she had heard the signal from Earth, she had felt a glimmer of hope. But hope was fragile, especially for a people who had suffered so long. Would the humans come, or would they turn away, just like everyone else? Days passed without word. Nera continued her work with the few surviving Tresse, trying to make the most of the limited resources they had. Life on the planet was difficult. The atmosphere had been damaged in the disaster, and much of the world's once thriving ecosystems had collapsed. The Tresse were doing their best to survive, but there was only so much they could do on their own. Then, one day, Nera stood outside and looked up at the sky. She had seen ships come and go over the years, but none like this. A massive human ship appeared on the horizon, its sleek form cutting through the sky like a bird of prey. Nera's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The humans had come. As the ship descended toward the planet, the Tresse gathered in the ruins of their ancient city. The elders and the young alike watched in awe as the humans landed. Eli Stroud and his team disembarked, greeted by a group of Tresse, led by Nera herself. The humans and the Tresse stood face to face for the first time in centuries. There were no grand speeches, no gestures of friendship, just a quiet understanding that, for the first time in a long while, both races had found each other. The Tresse were hesitant, unsure of what to expect, but they felt a sense of relief. The humans were here, and that was enough for now. Eli stepped forward, offering a hand to Nera, who took it cautiously. "We're here to help," he said simply. "You're not alone anymore." Nera's eyes glistened with tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt a hope that was not easily extinguished. The humans had come to protect the Tresse. And maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her people after all. The humans and the Tresei stood together in the ruins of what had once been a magnificent city. The air was thick with dust, and the buildings around them were crumbling, reminders of a civilization lost to time. But in that moment, a new energy filled the air, one that had been absent for centuries. The Tresei felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Commander Eli Stroud stood quietly, watching the Tresei gather around. The humans had come with no promises, only their word. They hadn't come to conquer or take control. They had come to help, to offer a chance for survival. He could see that the Tresei were cautious, unsure of what to expect. Their once proud civilization had been reduced to ruins, and they had learned not to trust easily. But there was something in their eyes, something that told him they were ready to rebuild, ready to believe again. Eli turned to his crew. "Get the supplies unloaded. We'll start by setting up a base here. The Tresei need everything we can offer." The crew moved swiftly, unloading medical equipment, food supplies, and advanced technology that would help the Tresei repair their damaged infrastructure. Eli knew the task ahead of them would be difficult. The Tresei's planet was in bad shape, and their resources were limited. But humanity had overcome great challenges before, and they were determined to do the same now. Nera watched as the humans worked. She had never seen anything like it. The humans moved with purpose and efficiency, their technology so different from what the Tresei had ever known. They brought with them tools that could heal the planet's damaged atmosphere, machinery that could restore the ecosystems that had long since vanished. It was like watching a dream unfold before her eyes. "What are they doing?" one of the younger Tresei asked Nera, her voice filled with wonder. "They are helping us," Nera replied. "For the first time in many years, we are not alone." As the days passed, the humans and the Tresei worked side by side. There was much to be done, and both sides understood that. The humans shared their knowledge, teaching the Tresei how to use their technology to restore their world. The Tresei, in turn, offered their wisdom about the planet's natural systems, helping the humans understand how best to care for it. It was a partnership, one that neither race had expected but both desperately needed. Nera spent many hours with Eli, discussing the Tresei's history, their culture, and their hopes for the future. She told him of the great cities that had once stood tall, of the libraries filled with knowledge, and of the people who had lived in peace for centuries. She spoke of the disaster that had shattered their world, of the years of isolation, and of the struggle to survive without help. Eli listened carefully, his heart heavy with empathy. He had seen so much in his years as a commander, but hearing the story of the Tresei, of a peaceful race that had been abandoned by the galaxy, struck a deep chord within him. He had always believed that humanity had a duty to help those in need, but this was different. The Tresei were not just a race in danger. They were a race with a rich history, with knowledge that could benefit the entire galaxy. They deserved to be saved, and humanity would do whatever it took to make that happen. One evening, as the sun set over the damaged city, Nera and Eli stood together, looking out at the horizon. The sky was a deep orange, the last light of the day fading as the stars began to appear. "We will rebuild," Nera said quietly. "It will take time, but we will do it. With your help, we can restore what was lost." Eli nodded, a small smile on his face. "We'll be here for as long as you need us. Together, we can make this world thrive again." But as the humans and the Tresei began their work, not everyone was happy about their newfound alliance. In the distant corners of the galaxy, there were those who saw the Tresei as a forgotten race, unworthy of attention. There were powerful factions, greedy for resources, who would see the Tresei's world as a prize to be taken. And there were others who simply did not trust the humans, fearing that their help would come with strings attached. A shadow loomed over the future of the Tresei and their new allies. But for now, Nera and Eli stood side by side, watching the stars above. They didn't know what challenges the future held, but they knew one thing for sure. They would face them together. The Tresei had been forgotten for far too long, but with the help of humanity, they would never be forgotten again. The days passed quickly as humanity and the Tresai worked together to rebuild what had been lost. Eli Stroud could feel the weight of the task ahead of them. The Tresai were a peaceful race, their history rich with knowledge and culture, but their planet was in ruins. There was much to do, and the time to act was now. Eli had spent weeks coordinating with his team, ensuring the best possible care for the Tresai. The humans brought advanced technology to help repair the planet's atmosphere, and their medical teams worked tirelessly to treat the injuries and illnesses that had plagued the Tresai since their world's collapse. Eli was proud of his crew. Everyone was doing their part, and the Tresai were beginning to see real progress. Yet, despite the advancements, something didn't sit right with Eli. The Tresai had been a forgotten race, but now they were being helped by humans, and that had drawn attention from those who did not want to see them thrive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nera approached Eli with a troubled expression. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced with a deep concern. "Commander Stroud," Nera began, her voice quiet but urgent. "There are rumors. I have heard whispers of ships in the distance, of factions coming to this world." Eli's brow furrowed. What kind of factions? Nera hesitated, her gaze shifting toward the horizon. "There are those in the galaxy who believe the Tresai's world is a treasure trove. Resources are still here, untouched by the war, and the planet can be restored. But some would prefer to claim these resources for themselves, without regard for our people." Eli's heart sank. He had feared this would happen. The Tresai were in a vulnerable position, and now that they were receiving help from humans, they had become a target. He had always believed that humanity's assistance was a force for good, but now it seemed that it had caught the attention of those who only saw value in the planet's resources. "We can't let that happen," Eli said firmly. "We've made a promise to the Tresai. We'll protect them." Nera nodded, but her expression was still troubled. "I fear we may not be able to protect ourselves from what is coming. The galaxy is vast, and those who wish to take what is ours are not so easily deterred." Eli stood silently for a moment, thinking. He had known that their mission was risky, but he had hoped the galaxy would see the Tresai for what they truly were, a peaceful, intelligent race in need of aid. He had hoped the other factions would respect the humans' goodwill. But the galaxy was not a place where kindness was always met with kindness. In the corners of space, there were those who only sought to take advantage of others. And now, the Tresai were caught in the middle of that struggle. "We'll need to prepare," Eli said at last. "We'll need to strengthen our defenses, and we'll need to be ready for whatever comes." Nera's eyes softened, grateful for Eli's resolve. "You are a true ally to our people, but I fear that even your strength may not be enough to stop what is coming." The next few days were filled with preparation. The human ship, once a symbol of peace, was now a beacon of protection. Eli and his team worked tirelessly, fortifying their position and ensuring that they were ready for any threat that might appear. They repaired the Tresai's old defense systems, using human technology to make them stronger and more effective. But despite their efforts, Eli knew that their task would not be easy. The Tresai were a peaceful people, and they had no desire for conflict. Yet, as more ships appeared on the horizon, Eli could see the fear in their eyes. The galaxy was a place of danger, and the Tresai had learned that lesson too well. One night, as Eli stood on the observation deck, watching the stars twinkle in the distance, Nera joined him again. She was quiet for a moment before speaking. "We are ready," she said softly. "But I don't know if we will ever truly be safe." Eli turned to face her, his eyes steady. "We will do everything we can to keep you safe. You're not alone in this anymore. We're here to protect you, no matter what." Nera smiled faintly. "Thank you, Commander Stroud. Your people have shown us kindness when no one else would. I will not forget that." Just then, the sound of a siren echoed across the base. Eli's heart skipped a beat. He knew what it meant. The first of the hostile ships had arrived. "Prepare for incoming ships," Eli ordered, his voice calm but urgent. "This is it. We've been expecting them." The humans and the Tresai quickly gathered at their stations. Eli's mind raced, but he kept his focus. The Tresai had trusted humanity to protect them, and he would not let them down. As the first enemy ship broke through the atmosphere, Eli took a deep breath. The battle for the future of the Tresai had begun, and no matter how hard the fight would be, humanity was ready to stand by their side. The tension was thick in the air as the humans and the Tresai gathered in the main command center. Eli Stroud stood at the front, his eyes scanning the display screens showing the incoming enemy ships. His team had worked tirelessly to strengthen the defenses, but there was no way to predict how many hostile ships were on their way or how prepared they truly were for the battle ahead. "Commander, the enemy fleet is advancing," reported Lieutenant Harris, a member of Eli's crew. "We estimate at least 5 ships are approaching the planet's orbit. They're not wasting any time." Eli's jaw tightened. He knew that these were the first of many. The hostile factions that had taken an interest in the Tresai's planet were relentless, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. He turned to Nera, who stood next to him, her face pale with worry. She had already seen too much destruction in her life. The last thing she wanted was more violence. But now, there was no choice. "Stay close," Eli said, his voice soft but firm. "We're going to do everything we can to protect this world." Nera nodded, but the fear in her eyes was clear. She had never been in a battle before. The Tresai had always prided themselves on peace, and now their world was being torn apart by outside forces. "We've done everything we can," Nera replied quietly. "But can we really stop them?" Eli gave her a reassuring smile. "We can, and we will. Humanity doesn't back down, and neither will we." As the enemy ships entered the planet's atmosphere, Eli activated the defenses. The sky above was filled with the flashing lights of energy blasts as the battle began. The Tresai had never seen anything like it before. They watched in awe as the humans' advanced technology clashed with the enemy's weaponry. Despite the humans' best efforts, the enemy fleet was powerful, and their weapons were devastating. The first few rounds of fire had shaken the Tresai's already fragile infrastructure. Buildings trembled, and the ground cracked beneath their feet. Nera winced as explosions echoed in the distance. "We need to protect the city's core," Eli ordered, his voice steady. "If they break through here, we'll lose everything." The humans and the Tresai worked quickly to reinforce the city's central hub. Eli and his team moved with precision, coordinating efforts to secure vital resources and protect the most vulnerable areas. But it was clear that the enemy would not relent easily. They had come for the planet, and they would stop at nothing to take it. Eli knew that every minute mattered. The humans had trained for this, but facing a fleet of unknown origin and strength was a different kind of challenge. The Tresai were doing their best to assist, using their knowledge of the terrain to help fortify their defenses. But the odds were stacked against them. The enemy had numbers, while the Tresai had hope and determination. "Commander," shouted Lieutenant Harris, "they're coming in fast. We can't hold them off for much longer." Eli's heart raced. His crew had given their all, but he knew that they couldn't protect the entire planet alone. The Tresai needed more than just defense. They needed a plan for survival. "Prepare for evacuation," Eli ordered. "We'll take the civilians to the underground shelters. We need to get them to safety before the city falls." Nera's eyes widened. "Evacuation? Are we really going to leave?" Eli placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. "We're not abandoning anyone, Nera. We're just buying time. The Tresai deserve to live. We'll fight until we can't fight anymore. But we have to make sure the people are safe." As the enemy ships drew closer, the humans and Tresai continued to work together. The evacuation began, and civilians were escorted to safety, their faces filled with fear, but also hope. Humanity had promised to protect them. And now, They were doing everything in their power to keep that promise. The first wave of enemy ships landed outside the city, their massive forms casting shadows over the landscape. The Tresai watched, terrified, as their world was invaded by those who cared nothing for their people. But they also saw something else, something they hadn't seen in a long time, the strength and bravery of the humans who stood beside them. Eli gave one last look at the Tresai city, now under siege. "Hold your ground," he said to his team. "We're not done yet." The battle raged on, with explosions rocking the ground and energy blasts lighting up the sky. The humans and Tresai fought side by side, pushing back against the invaders with everything they had. The fate of the planet hung in the balance. Nera watched as Eli led the charge, his determination unwavering. He was right. Humanity didn't back down. They were fighting for something greater than themselves. They were fighting for the Tresai, for the future of a world that had been forgotten. And as long as they stood together, they would never lose hope. The battle had raged for hours. The sky above was filled with flashing lights from the energy weapons, and the ground trembled under the weight of the explosions. Eli Stroud stood at the front lines, his gaze focused on the enemy forces that were relentlessly pushing forward. The humans and Tresai had done everything they could to hold the line, but it was clear that their defenses were wearing thin. "We can't keep this up much longer," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice strained as he crouched beside Eli. "The enemy is advancing faster than we can handle. We need reinforcements." Eli looked out across the battlefield, his mind racing. The human forces had done their best to protect the Tresai, but the enemy was overwhelming. They had the numbers, the firepower, and the will to conquer. Yet, despite the odds, Eli knew that he couldn't give up now. The Tresai had trusted humanity to protect them, and he would not let them down. "We're not done yet," Eli replied, his voice steady. "We've held this ground for too long to back down now." He turned to Nera, who had been working tirelessly to coordinate the Tresai's defense efforts. Her face was pale, but her determination was clear. She had come a long way from the frightened woman Eli had met weeks ago. Now she stood beside him, fighting for the survival of her people. "How are the civilians?" Eli asked, his concern evident. Nera nodded grimly. "The evacuation is mostly complete. Most of the Tresai are in the underground shelters, but we've lost contact with a few sectors. The enemy is targeting the city's core. We can't hold them off forever." Eli clenched his fists. The enemy had been methodical in their attack, striking at the heart of the city, where the Tresai's most valuable resources were stored. If they broke through, the Tresai's future would be in jeopardy. "We'll need to make one last stand," Eli said, his voice resolute. "If we can hold them here, it will give the Tresai enough time to regroup and rebuild. We can't let them take the core." Nera looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. "Are you sure we can do this?" Eli met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "I'm sure. We're not just fighting for this city. We're fighting for a future where the Tresai can rebuild and thrive. And we're not leaving without ensuring they have that chance." As the enemy forces advanced, Eli's team braced for the final push. The Tresai, though unaccustomed to battle, fought alongside the humans with everything they had. Their knowledge of the terrain proved invaluable as they set up makeshift traps and barriers to slow the invaders. The humans, with their advanced technology, fought with precision and determination, using everything at their disposal to keep the enemy at bay. The ground shook as another explosion rocked the city. Eli's heart pounded in his chest, but he kept his focus. The enemy was closing in, but they weren't the only ones with firepower. The humans had a secret weapon, one that hadn't been used yet. Eli motioned for Lieutenant Harris to come closer. "Prepare the secondary defense," Eli ordered. "We need to take this fight to them." Lieutenant Harris nodded and quickly moved to carry out the command. Moments later, a powerful hum filled the air as the secondary weapon came online. A massive energy shield erupted from the city's core, creating a protective barrier that pulsed with a brilliant blue light. The enemy forces were momentarily stunned, as they had not anticipated such a strong defense. "We've got their attention now," Eli said with a grim smile. "Let's make it count." With the shield in place, the humans and Tresai launched a counterattack. Eli and his team led the charge, pushing forward with renewed energy. The enemy, momentarily thrown off balance by the shield, struggled to regroup. The humans and Tresai fought with everything they had, pressing forward and reclaiming lost ground. But Eli knew that this wouldn't be enough. The shield could only hold for so long, and the enemy would soon adapt. He needed to do something more to turn the tide in their favor. "Call for reinforcements," Eli ordered, his voice steady but urgent. "We need backup now." Nera stepped forward, her face a mask of determination. "I'll contact the other human fleets. They've been waiting for this moment. It's time to call them in." Eli nodded. The Tresai were fighting for their survival, but so were the humans. He had no doubt that they would answer the call. The rest of humanity would not let them down. They had come to protect the Tresai, and they would not stop until the job was done. As Nera made the call, Eli took a deep breath and looked out at the battlefield. The enemy forces were regrouping, preparing for another assault. But this time, they would face something they weren't ready for. Reinforcements were on the way, and this fight would be far from over. In the distance, the first signs of the reinforcements appeared. A fleet of human ships, streaking across the sky toward the planet. Eli's heart raced. The battle was about to take a new turn, and humanity's strength was about to be fully revealed. "We're not alone," Eli muttered to himself, his voice filled with determination. "Not now. Not ever." With the reinforcements on their way, Eli knew that the enemy's days of conquest were numbered. The tide was turning, and humanity would fight until the Tresai were safe. The sky above was painted with the light of countless ships, their engines humming with power as they descended toward the battlefield. Eli Stroud stood with his hand on the railing, watching the approaching fleet. The hum of the energy shield had become a familiar sound, a sign that they had managed to buy the Tresai enough time. But now, with the reinforcements arriving, the situation was about to change. Nera stood beside him, her eyes scanning the sky. The weight of the battle had taken its toll on her, but she still held herself with the same quiet strength that Eli had come to admire. Together, they had faced the impossible, and now, together, they would win this fight. "They're coming," Nera said, her voice filled with quiet hope. Eli nodded, a determined look on his face. "It's time to finish this." The enemy forces, having been momentarily distracted by the appearance of the human fleet, were quickly regrouping, preparing for one last assault. But now they were outmatched. The humans had arrived with the reinforcements, bringing with them advanced technology and tactics the enemy couldn't possibly anticipate. The first wave of human ships landed on the battlefield, their engines roaring as they unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that cut through the enemy lines. The Tresai, emboldened by the sight of the reinforcements, fought with newfound strength. They pushed forward, using their knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the invaders and reclaim ground that had once been lost. Eli and his team joined the fray, charging into the battle alongside the Tresai. The tide had officially turned. With each strike, the invaders faltered. Their once overwhelming numbers now seemed insignificant against the combined might of humanity and the Tresai. In the midst of the chaos, Eli's communicator buzzed. He pulled it from his belt and listened carefully to the transmission. It was from Lieutenant Harris, leading the ground forces. "We've done it, sir," Harris said, his voice crackling with static. "The enemy is retreating. They've lost their command structure. They're falling back." Eli's heart raced. The victory they had fought so hard for was within reach. "Hold them off for as long as you can. Don't let them regroup." As Eli issued the order, the human fleet continued to rain down fire on the enemy. The invaders, once so sure of their victory, were now in full retreat. They had underestimated the resolve of humanity and the Tresai. They had underestimated the strength of those who were willing to fight for what was right. Hours passed, and the battlefield slowly grew quieter. The once thriving war zone was now littered with the wreckage of enemy ships and fallen soldiers. The Tresai, with the help of their human allies, had driven the invaders off their planet. It had been a hard-fought battle, but the cost of their victory was clear. The Tresai had lost so much, but they had gained something invaluable: freedom. Eli stood amidst the ruins of the battlefield, surveying the damage. The sky was slowly clearing, and the first rays of the setting sun cast a warm glow over the land. It was a moment of peace, the calm after the storm. Nera joined him, her face weary but filled with gratitude. "We did it," she said softly. Eli nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes, we did. But there's still work to be done." Nera smiled faintly. "You're right. This is just the beginning." The Tresai would need time to rebuild, to heal from the wounds of war. But now, with humanity by their side, they had hope. They had the strength to rise again. "I'll make sure they have everything they need," Nera said, determination in her voice. "The Tresai will recover, and will make sure they thrive." Eli placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "We'll help you. You're not alone anymore." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eli looked around at the faces of the Tresai and humans who had fought together. They had come from different worlds, different backgrounds, but in this moment, they were united. The battle was over, but the true challenge was just beginning. The Tresai would rebuild, and with humanity's help, they would rise to new heights. No longer abandoned, no longer forgotten. The Tresai had found new allies in the humans. Together, they would face whatever the future held, knowing that they were not alone. Eli turned to Nera one last time, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "The Tresai are no longer abandoned, and humanity will always be here, ready to stand by their side." Nera smiled back, the hope in her eyes reflecting the promise of a brighter future. "We will." With the distant hum of the ships overhead, and the sound of Tresai voices celebrating their hard-won freedom, Eli felt a sense of peace settle over him. The war was over, but the friendship between their people had only just begun.